welcome everybody to this Helpful Village release webinar, October 20th, which is our regular monthly webinar when we discuss about new and improvements to the platform. This is the agenda for the day. So we're starting with some news. We have some reminders. We have a Taxonomy Project update. We'll be discussing release notes. So what's new this month, and also what are the next priorities. So this is pretty much the usual agenda. Before we do anything else, we wanted to welcome new villages to the Helpful Village customer base. These essentially Suncoast villages in Florida. And they are a network of villages that at this point, it's Sarasota Village, city of Sarasota, LBK Paradise Center, which I don't know where it is, but is also part of the Suncoast villages. So I know they're here on the webinar. So welcome to the group, and good to see you here. The other big news is that we had the V2b Conference. I think it was 2 weeks ago. So that's a year annual event. So it's a big deal for us because we like kind of making some major announcements and rethinking and taking a step back. So we had a great time. I'm sure, maybe a lot of the people here in this webinar already participated at the conference, but maybe there are some that didn't. So we will be discussing some of the improvements that we announced at the conference and other news. So let's go at that. One of the news that we did at the conference is just showing this other graph, right? Which was saying what are the level of services that villages offer. So in our view, the first generation of villages started doing mainly these two things: offering services, kind of volunteer services, rides and other things, and then events with a social calendar of events. And in our view, that's great. And we really like all our villages that are doing that. But we think that maybe we should be thinking about also doing more things, adding more value to your membership base. And in our view, it could be the following. It could be, well, first, improving what we're doing, right? So we added the COVID-safe service clearance to our services, and also that we're doing events now with Zoom. So we started improving those two levels. And then the next thing is that we're adding some new modules, which we think is additional services that villages should be offering, I think. One is the phone check-ins, and we'll be demonstrating that today. I think our major new feature that we announced at the conference, because we have a new tool to do this, but it's essentially making phone calls to your membership base and asking how they're doing. Just having a person that cares about you and is wondering how you're doing is just so important. The other one is Village Talk. We will discuss also a little bit later. The other announcement we did at the conference is also our interest in health. As you all know, we have been discussing. We took one little step in this direction, and I'll be discussing about those. But basically, this pyramid is just a diagram for us about what are the services a village offers. So services and events, which is the base, check-ins, village talk and interest groups, and then the pinnacle, if you can help the members with their health. So let's illustrate this pyramid with just some print screens. I would say services and events, you're all familiar, so I'll not explain. So just basically how we do the volunteer matching and the event registration and participation. So that you're already very familiar with. Today, we're introducing this new revamped tool about the phone check-ins. Is basically, we have a check-ins dashboard where basically you can have a calendar of all your members and then see when was the last time you called them. And when you call them, how were they feeling? And then obviously green is that they're doing great. Maybe red and orange, they're not doing as good. So basically allows you to basically regularly and periodically check in with your members. Another thing, so this is basically the illustration of the pyramid I just showed. Another thing that we are very interested in is working on Village Talk and the interest groups. So we already had Village Talk before. We thought it was not good enough. So we have been working on this new release this month. There are already improvements about how we present the different interest groups to your members. So if you have a book club, if you have a COVID-related discussion group, if you have an announcements group, etc., we are just making that prettier and more appealing so that your villages can run interest groups with basically online forums and discussion groups. So that's another thing we have been working on. And the last thing on the pyramid was the pinnacle, which was the health module. So we have started taking the first steps in the health space. And I'm going to show that here. If you recognize this print screen, and I'll show you all this in the demo later today. But basically, you are familiar with all those tabs there: general, address, member, etc. So those are the tabs for any particular person. We added a health tab there on the right. And basically what we have in that health tab at this point is just the vaccination records. So we would allow villages talk to their members and say, well, when did you get your vaccination for COVID-1, for COVID-2, and you can also enter the flu vaccination that you had with number of doses, validity, etc. In the future, we probably connect this with service request, safe service clearance. So if you want to have your members that are vaccinated only having in-person services, we will connect all that. For now, the health module is very small because it's just showing that we are going in this direction. Want to do that? It's just storing the information about the vaccination records of the person. The other thing that I would say about health is that we believe it's an important step because a lot of villages do some work around health questions and issues. Now it's also a little bit more complicated because there is some red tape and legal aspects of that. So actually the health module, I'm showing it today, but it's not open. It will not be included in the release that we do this weekend. And it's working technically, right? So that's the statement I wanted to make. Like, first, we want to go. Second, technically, it's easy to do this. Third, it's just a legal aspect, right? So we need to have legal review and legal validation of these aspects, which is something we would like to discuss with villages or the village-to-village network, etc. Because I only feel comfortable adding this to the platform if we find a way to have a lawyer validating the steps that we are doing in this direction. So I think this is a work group for villages in general. So, but that's basically what we believe we should be doing. So that's a pyramid. So let's move on. We're gonna go into the reminders. So you're familiar with these slides also. Just a list of resources that we have in Helpful Village. We're doing the release webinar today. There is another webinar next week on Wednesday, October 27th at 2 p.m. Eastern, which is our Q&A webinar. So today we're presenting the improvements that we have done. So it's us talking, and next week is essentially villages talking, asking questions, and we just answer any questions you may have. By the way, I wanted to let you know that last week we also did another webinar that we called Helpful Village 101 webinar, because at the conference we thought we didn't want to talk about the basics, so we did something specific about the basics. That webinar was recorded, so if you feel that you would like to, it could be useful to you for your training, just let Christina know, and then we can definitely share that training webinar with you that we did last week. Actually, we spent 2 hours last week going over creating a person, creating a member, and creating a service request. Okay, other reminders is that we have a Helpful Village training docs guide. It's kind of the table of contents of all our training docs. And then we have a help center that has interactive answers to your questions. So you just search a knowledge base. There's a Slack group, and there is also a way to submit your improvement ideas to ask.helpfulvillage.com. I go quickly because this is reminders. For the V2b webinar we're doing next week, so we're collecting questions, and actually we're very lucky because Gary Frankel from JVSO is our national coordinator. So he helps us coordinate those questions. So he can be reached at the email address that you can see there. So hvusers@v2bnetwork.org. So that goes to Gary, and basically Gary is sorting through those questions, organizing them, putting them in the right order so that we can answer them next week. So at the same time, I wanted to.
Yep. Hey, Manuel.
Yes.
Thanks for the intro. Actually, I want to kind of concentrate on some web development questions and database questions. So I'm going to kind of main topics for next week. So if you have any questions on that, any questions, please send them in.
Thank you, Gary, for coming in. And then, yeah, Gary is the boss for next week's webinar. So he has a theme, and then if you have any questions, you can reach him on this email address. And then about how the next week's webinar works and what questions will be discussed. So Gary is a man for all this. So perfect. Okay, next next is another reminder: training docs and the help center. Just some pictures. The help center looks like this. So basically, if you go to support.helpfulvillage.com, you find all our documentation that is organized around different topics. You can also submit a request on the top right. And when you submit a request, it creates a ticket that goes to our support team. actually, when you're creating the ticket or the request, you basically type in the subject of the email, and the system automatically suggests you some answers. So maybe the answer is right there, and you don't even need to send it. So that's why we like it if you use it through our support help center. Just one last clarification is that we have two different systems, one for bugs. So if you have a bug, we invite you to go to support.helpfulvillage.com and submit a request. If it's an idea, so it's not something that is not working, but something that could be added, in that case, we invite you to go to this different URL, which is ask.helpfulvillage.com. Perfect. And with all that, we're going to move on to some content. So we have a taxonomy project that we have discussed several times, but we have a super important update to give you because we have great news about the taxonomy project. So let's go straight into it. For those that don't know what a taxonomy project is, it's just universal classification of services. Villages across the country give services different names that are local to their communities. But if we have kind of a universal definition of that service, this universal taxonomy, then we can add up the numbers. So that's kind of quick, very quick definition. But taxonomy, if you don't know what a taxonomy is, let us know because we have some content for that. We presented this at the conference basically with Capitol Hill Village. So if you were at the conference, maybe you have seen some of these slides, but they're so important that I need to go over those. First thing that I wanted to say is that we fiercely protect your data. So we have obviously villages across the country, and we think their data is super important. And that for that reason, we are very careful with this data sharing kind of taxonomy project, where we think each village can contribute a tiny bit of their data. So it's just not, they're not opening up all their database to this project, but just a tiny bit, just maybe how many services have been done last month, and that's it. And that's enough to provide a ton of value to this taxonomy project. The other thing that is important is that if you decide to participate in the taxonomy project, you contribute a tiny bit of your data, and also you're protecting the privacy of your villagers. So there is no personal data that is shared, no names, no emails, no phones, no addresses, etc. It's just overall numbers, and that don't put in danger the privacy of your members. Once again, here I would say that helpful villages are, I think it's our job and responsibility to firstly protect the village data. So we have set up a multi-level authorization process to ask villages that want to participate in the taxonomy project. So it looks a little bit like this. We presented this at the conference also. Like for each one of our customers that you can see there, we have a spreadsheet file, and we ask them, well, did we send them an email about the taxonomy project? Did they authorize? Yes. Did they authorize us to share the names of their service categories? Yes or no? Their event categories? Yes or no? Did we send it to Capitol Hill for classification? Yes or no? Did Capitol Hill map the local services to the taxonomy? Yes or no? When we have a classification, we enter that into the helpful village database for that specific village, and then we ask people if they accept to contribute their numbers, their count of services to the regional taxonomy report. So it's not just about, oh yeah, I want to participate, and then we just do a big mix and match of your data. It's like we go with you each step of the way and asking you if you're okay sharing this tiny bit of data. So we think this authorization and having the village decide what happens with that little tiny bit of data is super important. And that has brought us to the big news, which is that the taxonomy project, the taxonomy report actually exists today. So I'm going to be showing today during the presentation what the taxonomy project looks like. So it's not just a description as we have done in the past, but I'll be actually showing the actual document. So that's for in a couple of seconds, I think. Right after this slide, which is, do you guys want to see the taxonomy report? I hope so, because we have been talking about this for a long time. And actually I wanted to say that we have done a DC taxonomy report that is available to the executive directors of the DC villages, actually. Now, why DC? Well, just because they started, basically. So Capitol Hill did a lot of work around the classification of services. And then we have today 11 villages in the District of Columbia that are using our system, that agreed to this, that have authorized each one of the steps of the taxonomy project. So sharing their event services, their event categories, they agreed to share the count of their services to the report, and that it would be shared with the other DC villages. So that's great. Now, I will not be sharing their report, because that, as I was saying before, we are super protective of the privacy. So the DC group has their taxonomy report, but I'll not be showing it to you today because it's their data. But what I will do is that I can show you the report, how it looks like on some sort of an example, dummy example with different data that is not DC. So I have here a PDF file that I'm going to show you. And in this example, is using Los Angeles, and it's not; those are not real villages. So don't worry about this data for those villages. Like none of those villages exist. But I wanted to show you how the report is structured. So I'm going to get out of the presentation. I need to move my windows around because I need to find my PDF Acrobat Reader. There we go, and here it is. And then let me just maximize this report. Okay, here we go. So it looks like this, right? We say taxonomy report for this period of time, which is essentially 1 year. And then we can do different aggregation. In this case, I said before we had the DC aggregation of villages. Here is the Los Angeles aggregation of villages, which means that at this date, we produce this report for a number of villages that all agreed to participate in this report. So this is Acton Village, Corona Village, Fillmore, Irvine, Malibu, Oxnard, Palmdale, Pomona, Santa Clarita, Torrance, and Torrance Village. Anyways, so what's interesting here is that they are all, in this example, helpful village customers, they all agreed to participate in the taxonomy report, and they all agreed to put their numbers together. So if we do that, we can generate a number of charts. The first one that we show here is the number of members and the number of volunteers, right? And basically, we have here a chart and a table saying, okay, 1 year ago there was 2,300 members, and then the next month, and the next month, and the next month, and then last month we had 2,800 members. So two things that I wanted to show here is that, well, we see the chart how a collection or a group or a region of villages is evolving, though that's interesting all in it by itself. The other thing that I found super interesting is that now we have bigger numbers, right? So each village, so maybe one village can have 100 members, or let's say 200 members, and it's interesting if you go to talk to your mayor. But maybe if we're going to talk to the governor or something, well, we want to show numbers that are as big as possible to be, received and listened with more attention. So obviously, if we are adding up the members of a collection of villages, we end up with numbers that are way bigger. So for example, in this example, it would be good to go to the Los Angeles mayor and say, well, we are serving all the different villages in our area. We're serving 2,800 members. So now suddenly it's like, wow, that's a big number. We have 970 volunteers. So it's like, I wanted to show that if we add up the numbers of all villages, these numbers get more impressive, right? So, okay, that's the taxonomy report, number of members and volunteers, how they evolve over time. Now we have the taxonomy description of the services that have been done by all these villages. So we have 5 aggregation layers of services that are provided by village. So this is the Capitol Hill taxonomy. So they did the classification saying, well, of all the services that are done by villages, we can classify them in all these 5 categories. So house and home support, independent support, transportation, volunteer engagement, wellness support, etc. And then basically what we're doing here from Helpful Village is that we're adding up the number of services. So we can say that house and home support, we have done 800. And then here we have done 14,000, almost 15,000 rides. So same principle as before, like now, because we are adding up these numbers, suddenly these numbers are quite big, right? So we can go to, let's say, the governor of the state and say, well, we have done 37,000 services. So now suddenly like, wow, you're an important group because you're doing a lot of work in the community. So we calculate 2 things. One is the number of services completed, and the other thing is the number of hours served, because each one of these services, right, takes some time. So we are adding up the number of services and the number of hours for each one of these categories. One thing that is easy to do once we have this table is that we can do a pie chart, right? And then from here, we can understand what are the villages in our area doing. And then from this, in this example, would be 40% of that is transportation, 37% of this is wellness support, 19% of this is independent support, etc. Okay, so that's already interesting. If we keep going down, basically we'll see now a breakdown of these categories, which is kind of bigger categories, house and home support. Each one of these categories is broken down into subcategories. So if we go down to the next page, we see house and home support actually has is subclassified in these other services that are home systems maintenance and repair indoor, house and yard maintenance outdoor, etc. And then we have the same thing, count of services, hours served for those, and the evolution over time for each one of those. And then a pie chart for this subcategory, and same thing for each subcategory. So basically here is independent support, and these are different services that are with their names in the taxonomy. We're adding up the numbers. Same thing for transportation, where we are showing the numbers for different types of transportation. It can be transportation for driving, nutrition and groceries, for driving health and medical, driving other costs, and then we're adding up the numbers. So, and then same thing as we go down with the other categories. So there were 5 aggregation layers. So we do the report for the 5. Next step from this report is that we're working now on the classification of the event categories. So we don't have them. Actually, this is something we're working on with Capitol Hill about how to come up with different categories that could apply across the nation. But this is basically the report that is now available, that is called this Taxonomy Report, where we can add up the numbers of the impact of a collection of villages. Now I need to find my browser, because we're going to keep on going with the presentation. So we're back. Okay, perfect. So now what does this mean for you? Because we're talking about DC and Los Angeles. But one thing that we wanted to mention here is that the report is now available by region for the whole nation. So we started with this red box that you see there for DC. So we're adding up the number of 11 villages in DC. But now the technique, the tech is ready to do any aggregation of other regions, right? So immediately, for us, it's technically very easy to say, okay, we can do a taxonomy report for a regional report of California. Okay, well, if you want to do that, then we're technically ready to get that done. Or maybe you want to do another region, could be New Mexico or Massachusetts or Ohio. And all those are really possible, because that's the good thing with technology, right? Once you do it once, it's very easy to do it, the second and third time around. So the taxonomy report for DC exists. If we have village leaders or regional meetings in any of these areas, and they say, okay, yeah, I think we can talk to our other neighboring villages if they want to have aggregate numbers, and then you can talk to your neighboring villages or regional leaders, and then talk to us, and we will be happy to come up with another aggregation. We will do the same process. We need to go through the authorization. It's like, imagine that we're talking about the Ohio villages. We would need to hear from all the directors of the villages, let's say 5 or 6. I think we have 6 or 7 there in Ohio. And if they're all okay on adding up their numbers and contributing to this report, they need to send us an email, and then we're good. And then, okay, then the Ohio taxonomy report exists. And once we have all these regions, obviously it's very easy. It's as easy actually to do an aggregation for the whole nation. And if we do add up the number for the whole nation, obviously the numbers are even bigger. Maybe we can say we're helping, let's say, I don't know, 25 or 30,000 members. And then if we set up a meeting with I don't know, Joe Biden, because I think he has some free time next week, we could tell him how much people and how many services the movement is doing. So he may potentially want to provide some money. Now, one thing we wanted to make clear is that it's super easy to participate. Our customers know this, because basically Helpful Village is basically most of the work, and you can participate in this project without effort. So there is the only effort there is that you need to send us the authorization. We want to make sure that we're doing something that you're comfortable with. If you don't want to participate, well, then you don't, and that's fine with us. But if you want to participate, Helpful Village takes care of all the hassle of saying, well, how do we do the classification with the Capitol Hill taxonomy? How do we enter the code so that we can classify the number on the national denomination or the universal denomination of services? You don't need to go through all that hassle. We can take care of that for you. Now, if you want to participate, Christina is the main person here. So you can always email Christina at helpfulvillage.com. She's managing the whole authorization cycle. And then these are the things, the authorizations that we're currently handling. It's the name of your service categories, name of the event categories, and also the service count and event participation count. So we may go back to you if you want to authorize some of these additional steps. I wanted to say that we have, I think in the last count, we had more than 50 villages participating in the project already at some level, and adding to the classification of services. So, so we think it's super important to do this project. So that was the update for the taxonomy report. I don't know, Chris, is there a question or something?
Yeah, can the date range be changed?
So not in this first version, right? Like as we always do, is like this is the first version we came up with, and we definitely are, looking forward to receiving some additional feedback, and potentially adding, kind of date ranges or other things. So we take that as a useful feedback, and we can consider that for a second version. So that keeps evolving, right? I mean, we always proceed in a similar way, right? We open up new features and new spaces with a simple version of the report as we just showed, and then we listen to other ideas to make it better. So this is version 1, but we can improve it over time. Okay. You see if my slides are moving or not. There you go. With this, we move on to release notes. So that's the discussion about taxonomy. So this is now the improvements we have added to the platform. These improvements will not be available on your website before this weekend. So we're discussing them today. Only this weekend, we will put them on the server, and you can start using them next week. First change is the upcoming events plugin. So on your editable pages, right, on your homepage or editable pages, you have a possibility to show your upcoming events. Well, now we have added the possibility to show the list of your upcoming events just with the pictures, because that makes them so much more appealing. So this actually becomes the new default way. You can, if you contact our team, we can still display your events in this other more textual way. If you don't say anything, you will see this new version appear. If you want to keep the old one, well, you can contact us, and then we can see that. Next improvement is called templates for snail mail or USPS. So basically, for our customers that are used to email templates, right? What we do is that we apply a template, which is kind of some text that you set up once, and then that has to contain some variables like the first name, last name, etc., that can be replaced on the email when you send them out. For example, when you receive an invitation to renew membership. Now, for some people, they will not do it through the email because they don't read their emails or they don't have emails. So you need to send them some snail mail, a letter. So you can now do this. You can create a Word template with Microsoft Word that will contain some variables, which is actually the same name of the variables you use for the emails. And then basically, I'll show you how you can go to the docs tab of your user profile. You can choose one of those templates, and you can apply it. And basically, it will download a Word document using basically the template text that you set up and you came up with, and also with the variables replaced, like first name, last name, etc. I can show this at the demo. It's easier. Sometimes things are easy to show and hard to explain. We also have a new dashboard for volunteer availability. So basically, this was coming from our discussion we had recently with Gary about reports that were requested by members. This was one of them. Is basically you have your different volunteer activities and you have active volunteers for each one of those. This table is now going to show you how many volunteers are active for each one of your volunteer activities. So if you see, for example, here, we only have 3 people that are knowledgeable about computer assistance on a Mac. If you think it is not enough, maybe you can do some effort to try to recruit some other volunteers in this category. And this is going to give you the availability for every day of the week. Snow removers seems not to be very popular. That's a tough job. Okay, another cool improvement, and we're very excited about this one too, is the possibility to make payments with ACH, which is basically automatic clearinghouse is what ACH means, but it's essentially your bank account. So now when you're making a payment for membership, you can register the bank account of the member so that they basically can take well, basically the monthly payments for their membership or the one-time payment for their membership from their bank account. Now, why is that interesting? We still provide the possibility to do it by credit card. So people can do it by credit card. Credit card is super convenient, super quick, super fast. But the fees are higher. The good thing with the ACH option is that we have lower fees, so your village makes more money. So if you can have your members paying through the bank rather than through credit card, there is more money going to your village. Now, the fees that most villages pay through Stripe, which is our payment provider for both options, for the credit cards, but also for the bank payments, are the following. So Stripe does a nonprofit rate for, they will ask you nonprofit discount. So they'll ask you for some 501c3 documentation and stuff like that, but most of our villages easily get the nonprofit rate for their donations. And the fees for credit card payments are, for most villages, because actually each village needs to ask, and make a deal with Stripe, but they end up all with the same deal mostly, is 2.2% plus 30 cents per payment. 2.2% plus 30 cents per payment. Now, the Stripe fee for a bank payment is 0.8%. So we came down from the 2.2 to 0.8. The other thing is, like, 2.2 is the fee for the donations. So Stripe applies a different fee for payments. So when it's not, for example, here, if it's a payment, they would apply a fee of 2.9%. I know some of our villages only have one Stripe account because they got one deal by which Stripe was okay if they made all their payments through that Stripe account, and maybe they applied the 2.2%. Some other villages were told that they needed to have two separate Stripe accounts, one for donations, one for payments, and they applied two different fees. A helpful village can accommodate those two. So you can have a donations Stripe account and a payments Stripe account. Whew. And then what is clear, the most important information to remember about this is that the bank account payments, they have much lower fees than the credit card. So you may want to start inviting your members to make their payment through their banks rather than the credit cards. Okay, so that's coming this weekend. So there'll be a training doc. Christina is putting that together. So we're going to distribute that, but this is an option that is bringing more money to your village. I forgot to say, but there is a helpful village also processing fee to be totally complete with the description. And we're applying to the bank fees the same fees that we're applying to the credit card payment. So the helpful village fee is 0.8%, which is 8 cents for $10. And so basically for us, the fee doesn't change for the bank or the credit card payments. The helpful village, we do the exact, similar kind of work. For Stripe, the fees are different. Wow. I mean, I promise this is not that complicated, but just talking about all these numbers gave me a headache. So let's move on to the next one. And if you have questions, obviously, we will clarify that. Background checks. So that's another improvement we added to the conference, and we have a lot of these big improvements. So one thing that happened before is that a lot of our villages, they had a separate provider so that they were running the background checks with, I don't know, verified volunteers, Sterling volunteers, or other companies that do background checks. And basically that was a totally separate process on a different platform. And then they run the background check, and then they needed to copy paste data into Helpful Village. We thought it would be much easier if we have an integrated process into Helpful Village where basically you can request the background check from the Helpful Village platform. And then basically you don't need to set up another contract with a different provider. You don't need to have a separate system and separate operation. You can do it all from Helpful Village. So in order to do this, pretty much like we do for the payments, we have a partner. Our partner for payments is called Stripe. Our partner for background checks is called Checker, which is a multi-billion also company that is doing actually. So what we do here is that we communicate like we do for Stripe. We communicate with their server. There is a workflow. They run the database checks with the criminal databases and stuff, and they let us know, yes, it was okay. Now this person could not be cleared from the background check. So I'll show this on the demo later today. But before I show it, we need to talk money about these background checks, because background checks are not free, and actually they are more expensive than I thought. So basically, let's take a minute to understand this. So basically, so everything that is on the table is basically from our partner. So they have these different packages. So you can choose what type of background check you run. On our platform, we're only allowing one, but we wanted to have some discussion, conversation with villages that are interested in this. But essentially what Checker allows, oh God, I have a fire alarm, but I know it's not in my house. Okay, well, I don't think there's much I can do about this. So Chris, can you take over? Maybe I can unmute myself and you can explain how the pricing table works, hoping that the alarm will stop. Okay.
Okay. Okay. There are different packages. So this is the base package where the checks that are done are the Social Security number trace, National Sex Offender Search, Global Watch List, and then we check the National Criminal Database. So if the person has no records on the National Criminal Database, the price is $10 per check. But if the person does have any record on the National Criminal Database, then it would convert to the standard package. So if there's a hit, there's a $15 add-on. So the price would be $25 if the person has a record, right? Then for the standard package, the price is $25 per check, and it's exactly the same as the base package, but it also checks the 7-year county criminal search, but only on the county of residence. And then there's another option, which is the Pro package, that the price is $35 per check, where it's exactly the same that the standard package, but they do the check for the 7-year county criminal search for unlimited county, not only on the residence, right? Moreover, this a note over here, they will pass through any county, core, state, and DMV fees at cost. This is a link, so you can, once we will put the presentation as always on the Help Center, you can click on it and have all the details, right? Then this 99 cents helpful village fee per background check request. Okay. Let's let me just Manuel have the let me see if Manuel is getting back, or if not,
yeah.
I take the screen back.
Yes,
again.
Chris.
Yes, Manuel. I have explained the different packages.
Okay.
And also the fees that can apply, and also helpful village fee per background check. So
perfect. Okay, perfect.
Continue.
So yeah, I'm sorry for that. Actually, now remembered I received this email about they were testing the fire alarm, but I didn't think it was gonna be this bad. So I just walked outside, so it's sunnier. So yeah, basically what we're gonna do with this. So basically this is what the new feature, villages that are interested, we recommend we kind of do, I mean, contact us and we're gonna be with you running these tests and really carefully going through this process with you.
Manuel?
Yes.
How does it work as far as does Helpful Village send an email to the volunteer, or do we do that outside of the system? Or?
No, it's a great question. So let me explain the process a little bit. So basically what we do is that you create the person into Helpful Village, right? So you have their name, first name, last name, and email address. You create that first, and then you go to the volunteer tab, and then you can hit the run background check. When you do that, Helpful Village is gonna be talking with our partner, and actually our partner sends an email to the volunteer saying, inviting them, right? Saying, well, you know, this organization has requested that you do a background check, etc. And then they go onto this partner database, and they are going to be providing consent, right? That they authorize to run the background checks. And also they're going to be asked some additional information. I believe the social security number, because obviously, because it's there on the list. So we don't receive it on Helpful Village. We don't have that. And I'm happy not to have it also. So it's all good. So basically they request, so they send the email, they send people to their website so that they can enter all the information that is necessary for the background check. The volunteer provides consent on their website, and then when they submit it, basically our partner is gonna contact our database and say yes, it was a green light or a red light. Thank you for the question, Mary. That's
Manuel, this is
yes.
Maria.
Yes.
What we're finding is that because we have a third party, obviously, that does the background check. What we're finding is that emails go out to the volunteer, and they don't answer the email, and it kind of just hangs in limbo. Is there any way to mark or alert that particular person so that we can call them to remind them?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point. So let me see if I understand entirely, Maria. But this is a great point. I mean, something that would be very easy is that I don't know if it is what you're saying, but basically, Helpful Village could send an email also to the volunteer at the same time when you click on that button, saying, okay, maybe we can have a email template where you can add your own language from the village, right? And say, okay, when we click on this button, there is an email that is being sent from us, right? Saying, okay, you will be invited to do this background check. It's an email that is coming from this other email address, and this is us, etc., so that they can anticipate this email that they're receiving from this other third party. Is it what you're saying, or you were seeing a different?
No, it's even beyond that. Our process right now is that when we send the information to the volunteer to the third party company, we call the volunteer and we also send them an email to tell them that they are going to be contacted by this company, so they understand that it's not some random damn company.
No, absolutely.
Okay, but sometimes the volunteer doesn't answer the email. And so we're waiting for them. They're on hold, and we're waiting for the information, and it's just hanging there. So I would love to see something that says, hey, this guy, the email was sent but never responded to, so that I could call the volunteer and then say to the volunteer, can you please answer the thing so that we can move you through?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I like that idea a lot. So I need to give it more thought, kind of offline, or we can discuss. But basically, one of the things that this can work with is with the vetting steps, right? You have vetting steps on the volunteer tab, and then maybe we can create there a task saying, well, we send the email right out to this person at this date. He has not, basically responded yet, so we need to have a reminder letting this person know that he needs to answer that. So yeah, definitely, we were thinking along those lines, is making it easier and more integrated with the Helpful Village workflow, right, and database, so that administrators can more easily go back to the volunteers for them to answer the email. Yeah.
Right. Christina and I have talked about possibly setting up a database that has the steps that are necessary so that we have a way of querying the database and finding those people we need to follow up with.
Absolutely. Yes. Makes a lot of sense. And the database is going to be these vetting steps. So I already see in the database how it looks like. So yeah, thank you for the feedback. I think that sounds great. And we definitely go in that direction.
I have a question.
Yes.
This is Lynn from News Neighbors. I'm curious as to, does the base package include a DMV check? And to make sure that they have a valid license?
Yeah. So I'll check that. I know they have, so when I talked with them, they had a specific DMV check. And I don't know if the base package includes the DMV package or if it's separate, but it's a great question. So definitely, well, I mean, I don't have the answer for you right at this second, but to you and to all other villages, if we have other questions, right, for when we're setting up this partnership with them, we can ask all these questions before we put this in operation. So thank you, Lynn, for that question. I'll ask them and we will let you know Christina, if you can make a note to get back to Lynn on this one. And then for other villages that may have other questions about this, yeah, same thing. So you can email support or Christina, and then we're going to get all these questions answered before we put this in to work for your village. Perfect. Okay, so that's one. Let's move on. I can't believe I did that. I clicked on the wrong button basically, but here. There we go. Here we go. Yeah, another big improvement we said before is the Village Talk interest group. So there are some improvements included in this new release where we are making the interest groups more appealing to your members, so that there is now an interest groups catalog where they can explore through with pictures and join different discussion groups. I'm not going to be talking about this today because I think we need more time to show you in detail the improvement we're doing, but I think this is a big area that we are working on is Village Talk and interest groups. These are just a few print screens showing how now it has pictures. You can join, invite, and have conversations. You can have emojis, images in your text messages. So those are for the people using it, and the notifications. But basically, again, I think we need to spend more time on Village Talk and interest groups. We'll do that in a subsequent webinar later in time. Because I need to finish the long list of improvements that we did this month. And time is running. So basically here, just wanted to say that we have 3 new reports. So 2 that we have discussed before is the unique participants service report and the unique participants event report. So let me tell you what it is. So basically this is a requirement, actually, Department of Aging in DC, but I know it can be a similar requirement by other villages. I mean, in other, grantors or something. It's like we do a report where we put 1 row per person. So even if a person took several service requests, it's gonna only be listed 1. And then we're gonna have different columns saying how many services they received. So basically here the grantor wants to know how many individuals were served by the village in a given date range. Same thing for events, how many individuals were served in a given date range, and then how many events this person has participated in. So those 2 reports are available under reporting docs. And there is a new report also that I think is very exciting, is a donors list. So we created a new report that's a little bit similar to the uniques, saying that we basically create a spreadsheet file with at most 1 row per donor in the history of the village or the date range that you're entering. So basically you have a full list of people that have already donated to your village. And then we're gonna sort it. I think we're sorting it by the most recent or the oldest donation. So people that donated a long time ago that maybe you want to go back at, or the opposite. And then we're giving you some additional extra information for your fundraising campaigns, like what is their average donation, or how much did they donate for their last donated, what is the total amount of donations over the lifetime of this donor, etc. So there is a new donors list. I don't want to spend too much time in words explaining it. Just become available. You can go to your reporting docs. The donors report will be there. Just, you can just pull it, and I'm sure you will find it useful. Here's where they are. So basically these reporting docs. So you see unique participant services report is a CSV, so a spreadsheet file. Unique participants event report is a CSV. And then you have the donors list that is at the bottom there with payments and donations. So those new reports coming this Friday. We have done more improvements to reports. So these reports that we have discussed when we did the reporting improvements webinar. So basically the name of the report of the files now correspond to the buttons that they show. So this is something we had discussed. We also add more information to the name of the file. For example, if you run an impact report for a given month, we're gonna say it on the name of the file. And then we have added more columns. So we usually realize, for example, for the donors list, it was interesting to know, well, is this person a member or not? Is it an active member or not an active member? Is this a volunteer or not? So those columns are included in those reports. Actually, in the payments report and in the donations report, now we add those 3 columns because we thought it can increase your chances of fundraising if you have that information in that very same file. We changed wording in some of the, we have better wording. When we're putting a report in the queue, because the report, in order to not disrupt the operations during the day, some of the reports, in particular the big ones like all people, are done overnight. those are put in a queue, and we had a sentence there saying, well, your report is in the queue. They're not very beautiful. And we got one of our village that are better with me than me with English saying same thing, but in a way nicer way. So thank you for that. Now we change also the interface so that we have an error message. If you have a start date, kind of dates for your report that don't make sense, kind of the end date before the start date. So we'll have an error message so that you don't have problems with weird stuff that you don't understand what's going on. So few reports improvements that have been added. And now the big piece here is the check-ins premium feature. As I was saying before, this is a major improvement that we did, that we announced at the conference. I mean, the taxonomy report is one, and then maybe this is the other one, more in the functionality side, that we believe villages should have as a default service the possibility to check in with all their members. So basically, I would say, you know, if I was a village leader and I was talking to a potential member, I would tell them, well, we do services, we do events, and we also make sure that all our members are doing okay. We regularly call them and make sure that they are doing all right. So basically, we have a dashboard for that, right? Which just shows for all your members how they're feeling with this green to red designation, and we can do a new phone check-in clicking on that button. So we will enter the information about that phone conversation. There is another huge improvement we did to the check-ins. We had a previous check-in version before, and that we had actually built during COVID. So when we did during COVID, it was everyone is in a panic mode, right? So it's like, oh, what are we gonna do? We're all stuck in our homes and groceries. Are people doing okay or not okay? But basically our system was expecting that you would do a phone check-in every day. But obviously what happened is that, you know, people started saying, well, you know, it's very nice that you call me. I appreciate the call, but every day is a little bit too often. So that's basically what one of the key changes in this new version of the check-in module is that you can now define a check-in frequency for that. So basically for each member, if you go to their additional info tab, you can say, okay, for this specific member, we want to set our minimum check-in frequency to 7 days or 14 days or 30 days or 60 days. You can define anything, but basically I think every village should define, okay, at least we want to talk to our member at least every 2 months. And then if that's the case, you come in here, you add a 60 here. And then when you do that, basically, it's going to translate into this. This is the check-ins dashboard, right? So you have the list of all your members. And it's color coded, right? So basically 5, and the greener it is the better they're doing. So this is they're doing awesome. You can think of a system with 5 stars. So 5 is very good. It's dark green. And then 4 is good, it's not as, and then, you know, 3, 2, and 1, and then 1 is bad, they're not doing well, etc. But what we like about the system is you can just see it graphically, right? You can see the colors and you see, well, most people are doing okay, except this person here, Evelyn Balistreri, that she was feeling not great when we called on the October 12th. So maybe we should call again and make sure that she's doing all right, right? So we have a very visual way for a village to know who is doing okay or not okay. The other thing that I wanted to show you here is that you see that there are numbers on the table sometimes. That's basically the check-in that was done on that day, right? But basically because we had a periodicity of the checks of 7 days, for example, you take the second row, it's actually Manuela Severo, so that would be me. You see on 9th of October, I said that I was doing good. And then the 10th of the 10th, we didn't call. The 11th, we didn't call, basically because for 7 days, we don't need to check in because we said for 7 days, we will be okay. And then after 7 days, we did a new check-in and with a different value. Now he's feeling excellent. So now we have a different caller. So you don't need to call every day, right? But then basically the dashboard is going to show you, okay, we did the check-in at this specific date. For a few days, it's going to be okay because we don't need to call every day. And then we need to call again and then ask with a different rating of how they're feeling. So basically look at the button on the top left here, right? It says new check-in. So that's the next thing that I would do. It's like I want to, I looked at my dashboard. I want to call one of our members. I click on new check-in. And then basically this is what the next screen I'm going to get. It's like I can enter the number, search a member in my database, right? And then once I have found the person, I'm going to enter the when. So when am I making my phone call? Maybe the system is going to show you current date, right, by default. But if it's a phone call you did yesterday and you wrote it in a piece of paper, you can obviously change the date. you have some guidelines where basically you're explaining, okay, if the village wants to tell, because the other thing that is interesting, the check-in, you don't need to do it yourself as an admin of the village. You don't need to do 200 phone calls. You can have your volunteers matched with some sort of phone tree with your members, so that your volunteers are doing the phone calls and registering these phone calls, right? So basically, when your volunteer is calling, maybe you want to have them mention some of the things. So in this case, the village can give some guidelines. For example, please inform the member about the village party next week. Also inform them about the COVID booster vaccination campaign. So the village can give some guidelines for the conversation. And then when the volunteer goes in, well, on the right-hand side here, you see the different questions they're asking. Well, how are you feeling? So these were the 1 to 5 color-coded system that we showed before. And another set of other questions. Do you need groceries? Do you need medication? Do you want to call back? Is there anything else? Which is basically, what are the comments that you want to make? And then you can record the conversation topics of that check-in. So what did you talk about with the person? Did we talk about the weather? Did we talk about the wedding of their daughter? Did you talk about the village party, etc.? So if we are recording the conversation topics, that can also be useful in the future, basically to see what are the interesting things to this particular member. And then at the end, you can also record the number of minutes that the duration lasted, because we're always counting the effort of your volunteers and your village for the community. So that's basically how you do a check-in. We will show we need to do a training session actually on the new check-ins feature, because it's super exciting. So I think next month we'll take some time to do some more specific check-ins. So we're doing the announcements today, but I think we need to do a webinar for training, going into detail and doing that with you one step at a time. So I'm thinking that there may be no demo today, because it's we are arriving at the top of the hour. So many announcements, so I don't know about the demo, but basically here is the next thing we're working on. So with the dev team, we're working on essentially more reports that we discussed about last month. So there is an efforts report per person. So, the rides and miles that a volunteer did. Same thing with a letter that is a Word template for basically tax deduction for their mileage. Emergency preparedness report, listing of clusters with their lead captain, report with people with no valid emails, all former volunteers report, mileage report, reconciliation report. So those are the things we're working on. Obviously, we'll discuss about those at the next meeting. Perfect. And then this is essentially Q&A, and go back to Gary for basically there is another webinar next week, actually the Q&A webinar. So please don't forget to register on the V2b website. If you want to have questions about the new improvements that we added or any of this, we can continue the conversation next week. I can stay online for a couple more minutes. We usually don't want to, we don't like extending our webinars too much, but if you have some questions, I'm happy to stay for a couple more minutes.
I have a question. I'm just curious. Yeah, this is Sheila. I'm just curious about the access rights. Yes. What access right would you need to be able to do the phone check-ins?
To the phone check-in. So basically, so we have two things. First, if you're doing that as a village administrator, you need to have admin rights, right? If you're doing that from the village.
No, if you want to do it as a volunteer.
Yeah, if you're doing that as a volunteer, there is a process by which you I can show. You can see my screen, right?
Yeah.
And then basically here, I can search a person, and then down here, you can create a new relationship. Basically, what we're doing here is that, okay, there is Elda, and I select this person. Okay, now we have me and this person, and basically the relationship name we have is like, well, it can be the son, daughter, or other things, but this is called village buddy that maybe we need to rename, but basically there is a specific relationship that makes the matching for the phone tree between the member and the volunteer. And then once you do that, this specific volunteer is specifically authorized to manage the check-ins for this specific member.
Okay, thank you.
That's a great question. As I said before, it's a great question. And I was saying before, we realized that we need to give you, I love the new check-ins module. I also realized that we need to give you some specific training with kind of some reminders how to put it in place, but I wanted you to know that, and I think it's super exciting.
Okay.
By the way, let me show it while I'm here. Admin, actually volunteers. We go to check-ins. Basically, we show the phone tree. It's basically, we have this volunteer, Kenneth Abbott, that is checking on 4 different members. So you as an admin of the village, you can see, oh, okay, for this member, who is checking on them? Well, it's actually this person, right? And either they're running the check-ins or not. These other volunteers doing with these 5 other members, these other volunteers doing these 5 other members. So this kind of the phone tree.
Whoops,
And then
where'd that come from? How did you make the phone tree? Did I missed something?
It's exactly the way I showed before. When we went to it's a village body. When you said a village body, between a member and a volunteer, that's creating the phone tree. So then it's just showing those associations there. And then the other thing that I wanted to show you here live is basically this other check-ins dashboard, right? Which is saying, okay, for all these members, right? How are they doing? So this one is doing good. This one is doing excellent. This one is doing not as good. Evelyn was not doing great. So maybe if I want to do a phone call for her, right? Because she was not doing very well. I can click on this cross here. So she's selected here. I'm doing the phone call now. So this is the time, California time at this moment. I have some guidelines that I received from my village to mention the party next week. And now I make the phone call, right? Get ring, and then she picks up the phone. And we're gonna talk about these different things. Okay, hey, this is I'm Manuel, a volunteer for our New York or Los Angeles village, and I just wanted to know how you're doing. So what do you think, and whatever. And then in the conversation, there's these different things we need to ask, right? So I wanted to ask her, how are you feeling today? It was saying, and then she would say, I was not feeling great last week, but now I'm feeling much better because my son came, or whatever other, conversation. Obviously, you need to spend time talking about all those things. In the conversation, I may want to ask, if she's all right, how's she doing? Is she all sorted out with groceries, with medication? Maybe because she was not doing all that great last week, maybe she wants a call back from the village. What does she think? Maybe yes. If she said yes, we go here, and we can make some comments here. Her son came yesterday, and she is now feeling much better, right? So that would be my report of the check-in. And then here on the conversation topics, right? I can just report saying, okay, we spent 5 minutes talking about the weather, and then we talked about the wedding of the daughter. This is not even English. Give me a second. Their wedding.
Right. Okay.
And then maybe 10 minutes, we did talk about the village party for 20 minutes. And then, hey, don't forget about the volcano. But only 5 minutes, because who cares? Just a joke. Okay, so we discussed about all this, and this is 5, 10, 15, 35, 40, which I don't understand why. I mean, we will add this up automatically before the weekend, because you don't need to do this math. And then we'd spend 40 minutes, and then basically this is a conversation I had with the member. I'm ready to save it. And when I save it, it's gonna obviously store it in the system. So it's gonna be update the dashboard here. You see here, Evelyn, that she was not doing great. She was in orange. Well, now she's green because I called her and she's doing fine. So that's pretty cool. And then you can do more things here. Maybe one thing, yeah. Anyways, I don't want to do the full training now, but just give you a sense of how this is useful. And I personally love this on just making sure everyone is doing all right with just a phone call. It takes 5 minutes, engages your volunteers, engages your members, that they know that they have someone that cares about them. So if anyone has feedback about this and want to know more, I'm super excited about this new feature. So we can talk some more about that. But for now, I think we need to stop our session.
Okay.
We don't want to stay here for 2 hours today, but it was great chance to meet with you all. Please don't hesitate to send us your emails and to register for the V2b webinar next week, and we'll talk some more.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. Obviously, there is no more fire alarm now because they only put it during the webinar.
Of course.
All right, thanks very well.
Good, thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
All right, bye.
Thank you.